I am 68 years old. I just had open heart surgery, and 3 days after I came home from the hospital, my son called me. He did not call to check on me. He called to ask me to watch his 4 children for the weekend. I said, Scott, I just had heart surgery. He said,
Mom, you'll just be sitting there anyway.
but here's what Scott did not know. I had already made a plan, and on Friday morning, when he walked up my porch steps and saw who was standing behind me, his face went completely white. My name is Renee Busby. I am from Knoxville, Tennessee, and this is my story. I want you to picture something. You are lying in a hospital bed. There are wires on your chest. A machine beside you is doing the job your heart almost stopped doing on its own. That was me, 3 days earlier, in the cardiac ICU at Blunt Memorial Hospital in Maryville, Tennessee. My surgeon's name was Dr. James Whitfield. He came in the morning after my surgery and sat down in the chair beside my bed. Doctors don't usually sit down. When they sit down, it is serious. He told me I had 2 blocked arteries. He said if the woman in the grocery store had not called 911 when she did, I would not have made it to the hospital. 40 minutes. That is what he said. 40 minutes between me and not waking up at all. I had 2 stents placed during emergency surgery. I spent 3 days in the ICU, then 2 more days in a regular room. On day 5, they gave me my discharge papers. The nurse who went over the instructions with me was a young woman named Tammy. She had a kind face, and she spoke slowly and clearly. She said, Mrs. Busby, I need you to understand something. Your heart has been through serious trauma. The next 6 weeks are critical. No lifting anything over 5 pounds. No prolonged standing. No strenuous activity of any kind. And most importantly, no stress. No caregiving responsibilities for small children. Your body needs every bit of energy it has just to heal. I nodded. I signed the papers. I thought I understood. My neighbor Dorothy was waiting in the lobby to drive me home. Dorothy Haynes, 71 years old, 19 years of living next door to me. She had visited me every single day. I was in that hospital every day. Thermos of coffee in one hand, library book in the other. My son Scott visited once. The first day. He stayed 40 minutes. He had a work thing, he said. My daughter-in-law Melina did not come at all. Dorothy drove me home in her blue Buick. She helped me up the front steps. She made me a bowl of soup. She sat with me for an hour, and then she said, I am right next door if you need anything. And she meant it. I sat in my living room that evening. The house was quiet. My chest still ached from the incision. I was grateful to be alive. I was grateful for Dorothy. I did not know that 3 days later, my phone would ring, and the voice on the other end would make my heart work harder than it had worked since that grocery store. I need to tell you who I am, so that what comes next makes sense. I grew up in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, 3rd of 4 children. My mother worked at the school cafeteria. My father drove a delivery truck. We did not have extra of anything, but we had enough. And I was raised with one very clear lesson. You show up for family. No questions. No conditions. You show up. I married Harold Busby in 1979. We met at a church potluck in Knoxville. He was the kind of man who always had a handkerchief in his pocket, the kind of man who fixed things before you noticed they were broken. I loved him completely. We had Scott in 1981, our only child. Harold died of a stroke in 1992. Scott was 11 years old. I was 37. I want you to understand what that means. 37 years old, a widow, an 11-year-old son, a mortgage, a job at the front desk of Dr. Patterson's dental office on Kingston Pike. I did not fall apart. I did not have the luxury of falling apart. I made Scott's lunches every morning. I went to every single baseball game he ever played. I sat in the bleachers in the rain with a stadium blanket over my shoulders, and I cheered. I skipped buying a new winter coat 2 years in a row to save money for Scott's college applications. I drove him to campus visits in 6 different states. I cried in the car, alone, on the way home from dropping him at the University of Tennessee. And then I went back to work on Monday morning. I was a good mother. I want to say that clearly, not because I need a medal, but because what happened later, it did not happen because I failed him. It happened because I taught him that I would always say yes. When Scott was in high school, he needed money for a class trip. Yes. When he was in college, he needed rent help for his apartment. Yes. When he got his first job in Nashville and asked if I would help him move. Yes. When he married Melina and they needed someone to host Thanksgiving for 22 people. Yes. Always yes. Without stopping to ask, what about me? I am not blaming Scott entirely. I built this. I set this table. I just did not understand that yet. Scott met Melina in Nashville. He called me on a Tuesday night and said, "Mom, I met someone." I could hear it in his voice, that particular kind of happy that a mother recognizes and is grateful for. I met Melina for the first time at a restaurant in Nashville. She was polished, pretty. She reached across the table and shook my hand, not unfriendly, just formal, like she was meeting a colleague. I told myself it was nerves. First meeting. Of course she is nervous. They got married 2 years later. A September wedding outside of Franklin, Tennessee. 200 guests. Open bar. Beautiful flowers. I sat at the table marked family. I was the only one at that table who did not know anyone else there. Melina's family filled the rest of the table. Her mother, her sister, her aunt and uncle, all of them laughing and sharing memories I was not part of. I smiled through the whole dinner. I danced with Scott at the reception. And I drove home alone at 10 o'clock telling myself that every family is different. Over the next 12 years, a pattern formed. I was not invited to holidays unless I offered to cook. I was not called to visit unless they needed something. The something was usually babysitting or a casserole for a neighbor I had never met or someone to drive the children to a birthday party when both Scott and Melina had plans. I want to be fair here. Melina was not cruel. She never said an unkind word to my face. She was simply absent in the way that someone can be present in a room and completely absent at the same time. What hurt most was not Melina. What hurt most was Scott. Because Scott saw it. He had to have seen it. And he never once said anything. I told myself that was fine. He was a grown man. He had his own family now. I told myself what I always told myself. Show up. Be available. Say yes. I told myself that story right up until the day I dropped a can of soup on the floor of a grocery store in Maryville, Tennessee. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October. I was in the canned goods aisle at the Kroger on US 321. I had a list in my hand. Tomato soup, chicken broth, cream of mushroom. I was going to make a pot of Scott's favorite casserole to bring over that weekend. I reached up for the tomato soup, and then, all at once, a pressure in my chest like something was squeezing everything inside of me. My left arm went heavy. My vision narrowed. The can hit the floor. I heard it rolling, and then I heard a woman's voice saying, "Oh my Lord, are you all right? Somebody call 911. Her name was Carol. I did not know her name then. I found out later from the paramedics. Carol was 64 years old, and she had watched her own husband have a heart attack 8 years earlier, and she knew exactly what she was looking at. She did not freeze. She did not run for a manager. She called 911, and she got down on the floor beside me, and she held my hand. I do not remember the ambulance. I woke up in the ICU. There was a tube in my arm, a monitor beside me beeping steadily, a light above me that was too bright. The first face I saw was a nurse's. The second face I saw was Dr. Whitfield's. The third face I wanted to see was Scott's. He arrived 5 hours after the surgery. He came in still wearing his work clothes, a button-down and khaki pants. He stood at the foot of my bed. He said, "Mom, you scared me." I reached out my hand. He held it for a moment. Then he looked at his phone. Pause. He stayed 40 minutes. He had a work thing, he said, an early meeting the next morning. He kissed my forehead, and he left. Melina did not come. She texted. One text. It said, "Hope you feel better soon." Dorothy came the next morning at 8 o'clock. She brought a thermos of the good coffee, the kind with the vanilla in it that I like. She sat in the chair beside my bed, and she opened her library book, and she said, "I am not going anywhere." She came back every single day. Every day I was in that hospital. I noticed. I said nothing yet, but I noticed. They sent me home on a Thursday. Dorothy drove me. She helped me inside. She made me eat a bowl of chicken soup before she left. I was moving slowly. Every step was deliberate. The incision on my chest was tender. I got winded walking from my bedroom to the kitchen. The discharge instructions were on my nightstand. I had read them twice. No lifting over 5 pounds. No strenuous activity. No stress. No caregiving responsibilities for small children, not for 4 to 6 weeks. Sunday morning, 3 days after coming home, I was sitting at my kitchen table, cup of decaf, the light coming through the window. It was peaceful. Pause. My phone rang. Scott. "Hey, Mom." His voice was the casual kind, not the checking on you kind. He said, "So, I need to ask you something. Melina's sister Nicole was supposed to come this weekend and watch the kids. She just called and canceled. We have that work event Friday night through Sunday, the company retreat in Gatlinburg. We already paid for it. We really need someone to take the kids. You think you could do Friday through Sunday?" I sat very still. I set down my coffee cup. I said, "Scott, I just had open heart surgery. I have been home 3 days. I know, Mom, but you'll basically just be sitting there anyway, right? It's not like I'm asking you to do anything physical. The kids are good. They mostly just watch movies on the weekend. The youngest takes a nap at 1. I said, "Scott, I cannot do that. My discharge papers say." He cut me off. "Mom, you're their grandmother. This is what grandmothers do. We have no one else to call. You're their grandmother. This is what grandmothers do. I want you to sit with that for a moment." Because I did. 3 days out of the hospital. Stitches still tender. Discharge papers on my nightstand. And my son's argument is, "This is what grandmothers do." I said, "I will call you back." And I hung up. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time. The coffee went cold. The light moved across the floor. And I made a decision. Not the kind I usually made. Not the kind where I talked myself into yes. A different kind. The kind that starts with no and builds from there. I picked up my phone. And I called Dorothy. Dorothy picked up on the second ring. The way she always does. Like she is always ready. I told her everything. The phone call. Scott's words. "You're their grandmother. This is what grandmothers do." Dorothy was quiet the whole time I talked. She did not interrupt. She did not gasp. She did not say, "Oh, Renee, how awful." She just listened. When I finished, she said, "Renee, what do you want to happen? Not what should happen. Not what is the right thing to do. What do you want?" I thought about it, really thought about it, for maybe the first time in my adult life. I said, "I want Scott to understand what he asked me. Not to be angry at him. Not to punish anyone. I just want him to actually understand what his mother just had done to her body, and what he just asked of that body." Dorothy was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think I know how to do that. Can I make a phone call?" I said, "Who are you calling?" She said, "Your doctor." I said, "Dorothy," she said, "Renee, you almost died. Your son asked you to babysit 4 children 3 days later. Your cardiologist should know about this. It is medically relevant. I want to tell you something about Dorothy Haynes. She spent 30 years as a principal at a Knoxville elementary school. She dealt with parents who yelled, parents who lied, parents who sent sick children to school and called it fine. She learned a long time ago how to be completely calm inside a situation that is not calm at all. She was not doing this to cause trouble. She was doing this because she understood something I was still learning. Sometimes love means making the truth visible so that no one can look away from it. I said, "Okay, Dorothy, make the call." I called Scott back that afternoon. I told him to bring the children on Friday. He said, "Great, Mom. I knew you'd come through." I said nothing to that. I just said, "I'll see you Friday." Scott pulled up at 8:45 Friday morning. A silver SUV. I watched from my front window. He did not park. He left the car running. He opened the back doors and started pulling out backpacks and a diaper bag and a folded-up stroller. The children tumbled out one at a time. Lily, 9, with Scott's dark eyes and a soccer jersey. Marcus, 7, dragging a stuffed dog on the ground behind him. Emma, 5, already arguing about something with Marcus. And baby Cole, 2 years old, balanced on Scott's hip, still half asleep. I opened the front door. I moved carefully, slowly, the way my body made me move now. Scott barely looked at me. He was reading from his phone. Cole's nap is at 1. Lily has soccer practice tomorrow at 9 at West Hills Park. There's a bag of food I packed in the blue cooler. They can mostly take care of themselves during movies. He handed Cole to me. A 2-year-old, 28 pounds. My discharge papers said nothing over 5 pounds. I shifted Cole to my side and said nothing. Scott kissed the top of Lily's head. He ruffled Marcus's hair. He got back in the SUV. He backed out of the driveway without looking back. I stood in my front doorway with 4 children around me. Cole's hands on my shirt. Emma asking if I had apple juice. Marcus already running toward the living room. Lily looking at me with the careful eyes of a child who understands more than she should. She said, "Grandma, are you okay?" 9 years old. And she asked, "My son did not." I said, "I'm fine, sweetheart. Come on inside." I set Cole down gently. I felt the pull in my chest. I breathed through it the way Nurse Tammy taught me. And then I picked up my phone. And I texted Dorothy one word. "Ready." I want to tell you what Dorothy had arranged, because this part is important. After our phone call on Sunday, Dorothy contacted my cardiologist's office at Cardiovascular Associates of East Tennessee on Paper Mill Drive in Knoxville. My cardiologist's name is Dr. Patricia Wilkerson. She has been practicing cardiology for 26 years. She is a precise woman, measured in everything she says. Not cold, precise. Dorothy left a message with the nursing staff. She explained the situation. She said that her neighbor, Dr. Wilkerson's patient, had been sent home from the hospital 3 days ago following open heart surgery, and that her son had asked her to care for 4 young grandchildren for an entire weekend starting Friday, and that the patient had agreed. Dorothy said, "I am not asking you to interfere. I am asking if someone can make a house call, because I think this patient needs her doctor to be there when her son arrives to drop off those children. Dr. Wilkerson called Dorothy back herself. She listened to what Dorothy described. She asked 3 questions. Then she said, "I'll be there Friday morning." When I tell you that Dorothy Haynes is remarkable, I mean it. So, it is Friday morning. The children are in my living room. Marcus has already spilled his juice box, but is handling it by sitting on the throw pillow. Cole is asleep on the couch, which I did not expect. Emma has found my baking cabinet and is asking permission to make cookies. Lily is reading her book in the armchair, watching me with those careful eyes. It is 10:45 in the morning. There is a knock at my front door. I opened it. Dorothy stood on my porch. She had on her good cardigan, the navy one, and behind Dorothy on my porch steps, holding a medical bag in one hand and my discharge paperwork in the other, was Dr. Patricia Wilkerson. She had driven 22 miles from Knoxville on a Friday morning. She had not sent a nurse. She had come herself. She said, "Mrs. Busby, I understand you could use a home visit." I stepped back and let them both inside. Dr. Wilkerson checked my blood pressure. She listened to my heart. She did not comment on the children. She just did her job, quietly and professionally, while Emma tried to show her the cookie cutter collection. At 11:15, a silver SUV pulled up in front of my house. Scott, he had forgotten the portable DVD player the children needed for the drive home Sunday. He wanted to drop it off before they got too far out of town. I watched from the window as he got out of the car, came up the front walk, stepped up onto the porch, and stopped, because standing on his mother's porch was his mother's neighbor, Dorothy, and standing next to Dorothy was a woman in professional clothes with a stethoscope around her neck and a medical bag in her hand. And that woman was looking directly at him. His face changed. I saw it through the window. The confidence dropped. Something more honest moved into its place. He said, "Who is that?" Dorothy said, "Scott, come up on the porch. There is something you need to hear. I want you to understand what happened on that porch, because it was not a scene from a movie. Nobody yelled. Nobody cried. It was something quieter than that. And quieter things go deeper." Dr. Wilkerson introduced herself to Scott. She told him she was his mother's cardiologist. She told him she had treated Renee Busby for the last 3 years and that she was the attending physician on Renee's recent surgery. Then she said, "I want to talk to you about what your mother has been through." She did not raise her voice. She spoke to Scott the way a doctor speaks to a family member who does not fully understand a diagnosis. Clear, patient, serious. She said, "Your mother had 2 significant arterial blockages. She underwent emergency surgery. She was in the cardiac ICU for 3 days. The procedure she had, a double coronary stent placement, is not a minor procedure. It is a repair to the muscle that keeps her alive. We place stents inside arteries the width of a drinking straw. Those arteries need time to heal. They need no inflammation, no elevated blood pressure, no sustained physical exertion, and critically, no prolonged stress." Scott stood very still. He was listening. Dr. Wilkerson held out the discharge paperwork. She pointed to a specific line. She said, "This is what we sent home with your mother 4 days ago. This line here, it reads, 'No caregiving responsibilities for infants or young children for a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks.'" She paused. She let that sit. Then she said, "Your mother is currently caring for 4 children under the age of 10 inside that house. She has been doing so since approximately 9 this morning. She has been home from the hospital for less than 72 hours. Scott opened his mouth. Dorothy looked at him. Just looked at him. He closed his mouth. Dr. Wilkerson said, "I am not here to judge your decisions as a son. I am here because I have a medical and ethical responsibility to my patient. Your mother has a healing heart and stress, the physical stress of chasing a 2-year-old, the emotional stress of managing 4 children, the standing, the lifting. That stress can cause a cardiac event in a postoperative patient. It can put her back in my ICU. At worst, it can be fatal. I stood just inside my front door. I could hear everything through the screen. Cole was asleep on the couch behind me. The house was quiet. Dr. Wilkerson said one more thing. She said it quietly. She said she almost died in a grocery store 6 days ago. If you did not know the full weight of that before today, I hope you do now. Scott looked at the porch railing. He looked at his shoes. He looked at Dorothy. He did not look at me. Not yet. He said quietly, "Who called you?" Dr. Wilkerson said, "Someone who loves your mother." Scott stood on that porch for another full minute, not moving, just standing inside, whatever he was feeling. Then he said, "I'll get the kids." He came inside. He walked past me. He gathered backpacks. He woke Cole gently. He told Lily to put her book in her bag. He moved carefully, quietly, like a man who is aware, for the first time, of how much space he has been taking up. Before he reached the front door, I said his name. Scott. He stopped. He turned. And for the first time all morning, he looked at me. Really looked at me. At the woman standing carefully in her own doorway, moving slowly, breathing deliberately. His mother. I said, "I love you. I have always loved you. But I cannot keep disappearing to keep the peace. Not anymore." He nodded. He did not speak. He walked out the door with his children. Scott called me that evening. Friday night, around 7 o'clock. I was sitting in my living room, a cup of chamomile tea, the evening news low on the TV. His voice was different. Not the casual voice. Not the asking for something voice. Something else. Smaller. More careful. He said, "Mom, I owe you an apology." Not, "I am sorry if you felt." Not, "I did not mean to." An apology. Direct. He said, "I have not been treating you right. Not just this week. For a long time. I put things on you that I should have handled. I did not show up the way I should have when you were in the hospital. I am sorry." I sat with that. I did not rush to say it's fine. I did not rush to make him feel better. I just sat with it. I said, "Thank you for saying that. I need some time." He said, "I understand." We said good night. And I hung up. I want to stop here and tell you something, because this is the part of the story that most people skip. Everyone talks about the moment of confrontation, the porch, the doctor, the look on Scott's face. That is the part that feels satisfying. And I will not pretend it was not. But the real work came after that. The real work was not dramatic. It was quiet. It was slow. It was deciding day by day what kind of relationship I was willing to have going forward, and what I was no longer willing to accept. Here is what I learned about my own heart through all of this. Not the medical heart, the other kind. I had spent 40 years making myself available, making myself useful, making myself small enough to fit into whatever space other people left for me. I called it love. But love does not require you to disappear. Real love, the kind that lasts and is healthy, has edges. It has a line where one person ends and another begins. It has the word no in it sometimes. A real no, not a temporary no that eventually becomes yes. A no that you hold. I am 68 years old. I learned that at 68, and I am not embarrassed by that. I am just glad I learned it. Over the weeks that followed, Scott changed. Not dramatically, not perfectly, but visibly. He started stopping by on Saturday mornings with groceries, just showing up. No request attached. He would help me carry things in and sit at the kitchen table and drink coffee for 20 minutes. Sometimes we talked about Scott's job, about the kids at school, about a show he was watching. Normal things. Easy things. It was the first time in years that Scott had come to see me rather than to need me. That distinction matters more than I can say. Melina sent a card about 3 weeks after the porch. A simple card, white with flowers on the front. Inside she had written, "Renee, I hope you are healing well. I should have been there at the hospital. I am sorry I was not." 8 words. I should have been there. I am sorry. I read those 8 words 4 times. I put the card on my kitchen windowsill. I have not responded yet. I am taking my time. And that is allowed. There is something I want to say to you directly now. If you are watching this, if you are a woman of a certain age who has spent her life being the one who shows up, the one who cooks, who drives, who watches the kids, who says yes before the question is finished, I want you to hear this. Your body will eventually tell you what your mouth has been afraid to say. My body told me in a grocery store aisle in October, in the most dramatic way it could manage. It dropped me to the floor with 28 pounds of pressure in my chest and said, "Enough. Not enough to the world. Enough of this. Enough of shrinking. Enough of pretending that being needed is the same thing as being loved. They are not the same thing. Being needed is a transaction. Being loved is something else entirely. And you deserve the real thing. I am still healing. My chest scar is still pink. I walk 30 minutes every morning now, doctor's orders, down my street, past the oak trees, around the block, and back to my own front porch. Dorothy walks with me 3 days a week. We talk about small things. The neighbor who put up a new mailbox. The good coffee at the shop that opened on Market Street. The book she is reading. It is the best part of my day. Last Tuesday morning, Lily called me. My 9-year-old granddaughter. She called from Scott's house phone. She said, "Grandma, are you better?" I said, "Yes, sweetheart. I am getting there." She said, "Good, because I want to come see you. Just me. Not everybody. Just me." I said, "I would love that, Lily. Let's plan that." She said, "Okay, I will ask my dad." She called back 20 minutes later. She said, "Dad said yes. Next Saturday." I put the phone down and sat very still. Not because I was tired, because I was full. That child, the one who asked me on the front steps, "Grandma, are you okay?" while her father was already backing out of the driveway. She saw me. She always saw me. And here is what I know now. Being seen, really seen by even one person, it is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything. This is my story. I am Renee Busby. I am 68 years old. I am from Knoxville, Tennessee. I am still here. And for the first time in a very long time, I am here for myself. If you made it to the end of this story, you already know why I had to tell it. Now, I want to ask you something. Think of one time in your life when you said yes, when everything inside you was saying no. Drop it in the comments. And if this story reminded you of someone who needs to hear it, share it with her. Sometimes one story is all it takes. Subscribe if you haven't. There are more stories coming. Real women, real boundaries, and the quiet strength it takes to protect what matters.